Good afternoon. I'm Brett Eliasen, once again joined by Tyler Selcer. We're both associate attorneys here at the law office of Jacob E. Martinez. Today we've got an exciting topic to talk about. We're talking about record sealing in the state of Colorado. Record sealing is one of the most powerful tools down the road for a criminal defendant to utilize. So why don't you get started by talking about what record sealing is and when it's available?
Yeah, absolutely. We get a lot of calls about record sealing. If you're in a situation where you've had a case or you're working your way through a case, an important step in that process, and oftentimes one of the last steps, is to try to get whatever happened in that case sealed or expunged off of your record. Oftentimes we get calls from people calling in. The terms are not necessarily interchangeable. Expunging something really refers to trying to erase something off of your criminal history that occurred prior to your 18th birthday. If you were in trouble, if the case arose after your 18th birthday, therefore we'd be looking to seal the case. The main difference, other than just before and after 18, is the effect that an expungement order or a sealing order will have. Because expungement is tied to juveniles, if you're able to get something expunged, it's a slightly higher level of concealment of those records. Either way, it's something that you need to be taking into consideration, not just after your case, but as you're going through your case, so that hopefully we can resolve your case in such a way that allows you to seal your case and seal it as quick as possible.
Okay, so let's kind of break that down a little bit. The language regarding expungement allows a criminal defendant to deny it ever happened, whereas the language regarding a record sealing requires that the person answer any such question, no such record exists. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Either way, it's difficult because different applications have different questions. Whether you're applying for a loan, whether you're trying to get a new landlord or sign a new lease, or whether you're even just applying for a new job, these kind of questions they're going to come up frequently. And it matters what you say and how you say it. And then it's also tied to your potential Second Amendment rights too, because as we know, individuals with certain domestic violence misdemeanors or even felonies can't possess or purchase any firearms.
Okay, so let's talk about what kind of cases can be sealed. Obviously there's a number of different paths a case can take. Let's start with if a case gets dismissed. Is a dismissed case sealable, and what's that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So in order to have a case dismissed, what we know is that the DA, they filed charges against you at some point. You were looking at some charges. Now, whether they are dismissed outright or otherwise, if a case is dismissed, that's typically one of the easiest ways to get something sealed. That makes sense because if there's no merit to the case, they've dismissed it, you would think that it would be relatively easy to pull off of your record. In those types of cases, what we're going to be doing is filing our paperwork into the existing case. We're going to be using that old case number. We're going to be filing it with the judge that would have resided over that case or was residing over that case before it got dismissed. An important question with whatever route we're going is how much is this going to cost you? When you're trying to seal a dismissal or a case that was dismissed, it's a $65 filing fee. That applies to anybody, and that's just the amount you need to pay the court just to even look at the documents. The other option, and some other routes you can go, is maybe the police have investigated you and you were maybe even potentially arrested. So an arrest record exists, but you necessarily weren't having any charges filed against you. The difference between that and our current situation is the filing fees when you weren't even charged are $225, $224 as opposed to the $65.
Interesting. So from a record sealing perspective, it's actually better to have charges filed against you.
Yeah, and that is one of the strange things about that. There's several different kind of strange dynamics about the sealing. The difference between the 65 and the 224, in that light, yeah, it would be better to have the charges filed and dismissed than just to have been arrested and then have those charges never come to fruition at all.
Okay, so what if a person takes a conviction for a low-level offense, let's say a petty offense or even a municipal offense?
Yeah, absolutely. Just this past year in 2019, our laws here in Colorado changed pretty substantially when it comes to sealing and sealing convictions. We now know that many convictions can be sealed. Not only can they be sealed, but there's actually a presumption that many convictions will be sealed if the paperwork's done correctly and filed properly. So in Colorado, we know that if you are looking at the easiest rule is if you're looking at a conviction that did not have a victim, then we presume that it can be sealed. If there is a victim, then it may or may not be able to be sealed, and a lot of that comes down to whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor. There's something that we call the misdemeanor exception, and that basically says that as long as it's a misdemeanor, even though there may have been a victim, it still might be able to be sealed. We'd have to make a little bit higher showing to the judge that it should be sealed, but at least it's what we call eligible, and at least you can get into the front door of the court with it.
And that higher showing to the judge, it's a two-part showing, isn't it? The first being that enough time has passed to demonstrate that the person essentially is no longer a threat. And then the second being that the statutory balancing test weighs in favor of sealing. That's right, and could you walk us through the statutory balancing test?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're just trying to show a simple conviction to be sealed, what you really need to show the judge is that your interest in having these records sealed is greater than the public's interest in having access to these records. So a great example are your driving infractions. The public's interest in your driving record is very high because you find yourself on the road frequently, you're continuing to drive, and you're driving around the public. Therefore, it's very difficult to seal a driving record, even simple things on a driving record. On the other hand, a trespassing violation or a trespassing conviction, your interest in having that sealed would be higher because you're not actively, ideally trespassing or committing an offense that would be associated with that.
And what are the associated filing costs with filing on a conviction? We've talked about if no charges are filed, talked about if the charges are dismissed. What if there's a conviction that we end up being able to seal?
Absolutely. The most important distinction when we're looking at straight convictions is whether that conviction was in a municipal court or not. If the conviction was in a municipal court, in order to get that sealed, we're going to have to file the paperwork with the district court, a higher court in which the lower court sits. That is going to be $224. If the conviction is in a county or district court, we're just filing into the same case. We're not filing into a higher court, we're filing into the same case, and that's going to be that $65 again.
So it almost seems like there's a mirror or a pattern. When the case exists, when there's a case number to file into, it costs $65. When you have to go to a different court or no case was ever filed, it costs the $224. Is that fair?
That is fair. And I mean, ultimately it just comes down, I think, to judicial efficiency. If you're filing into a case that already exists, it's going to be that $65. But if the case doesn't exist, or if you're asking a new court to step in, that's going to be additional work. They haven't presided over the case, and that's why you're going to be facing that higher filing fee.
Okay, well, I think we've given a lot of background information. Let's say that I have a conviction on my record, and I call the law office of Jacob E. Martinez to seek a consult on record sealing. Can you tell me what the intake process looks like? What's going to happen to me as I'm calling the office?
Yeah, absolutely. Immediately you're going to speak with Susanna in our front office. She's going to get you lined out on ordering your Colorado Bureau of Investigation background history report. That's your Colorado Bureau of Investigation, your CBI background check. And that's going to tell us exactly what CBI thinks you have on your record. That's relevant because if we're able to get this sealed, it's CBI who we're going to ask to wrap everything up and seal it on their end. When you Google your name online, you probably see a number of different sites that are willing to sell you your background check. Those sites have an obligation to pull their records from CBI. That obligation, it's not something that they comply with every day. So if we're able to get something sealed through CBI, eventually those sites will also take it down as they're updated with the CBI. So that's why CBI is so important. We're going to get you to pull that background check. It's going to cost you $5 and take you not more than just a couple of minutes to pull. You'll send that to Susanna or I, and we're going to review that. We're going to make sure that whatever we're trying to seal is at least eligible. That was what we were talking about earlier. Can we even get in the front door with this conviction or with this record? If we can, and we'll review that for you and just tell you up front because we don't want to waste your money or your time on this. But if it looks like we can proceed, we'll get you to sign a fee agreement and we'll start working on that motion or that petition to seal.
Okay, well, I think we have an understanding of the process now. Big question, how much does it cost?
Yeah, always the most important question, what's your max exposure? In a sealing matter, if we're only going to seal one case for you, we're going to be looking for $750 up front. The judge, when they get our motion to seal, the judge is going to say one of three things. They're going to say granted, they're going to say denied, or likely they might say, let's have a hearing, let's get together, let's talk about it. If we have a hearing, it's not going to be a trial, there will be no jury, it will be adversarial, so that will mean that the district attorney on the other side will likely be arguing that this shouldn't be sealed. If we end up going to a hearing, an additional $250 is collected, and that puts you at a max of $1,000. You know you're not going to owe more, you know you're not going to get anything back.
And is that the same for record sealing and expungement? And is it the same for the $65 filing fee versus the $224 filing fee that we talked about?
Most cases that we're going to be sealing are going to be convictions, and we're going to be filing them into the case. So that $750 with the additional $250 is what's applicable for most cases. It's what's applicable for the $65 filing fee cases. If we're looking at one of those cases that's going to have one of those $224 filing fees, that amount's going to go up by exactly the addition of that filing fee. But if we're going to seal one case and you have multiple cases on your record, we'll assist you with sealing those other cases. In every additional case that we seal, we're going to give you a price break.
Okay. Well, I think that's about it from my end. Is there anything else that you want to add on the topic of record sealing, or I guess expungement as well?
You know, it's imperative. It's a process, of course, and you know, it's not necessarily the cheapest process to do. But you've ideally worked yourself out of the hole that you may have found yourself in at one point. You're hopefully, if you haven't already turned a new leaf, you're working on it now. So this is, although potentially overwhelming, something that can be the final step in putting this behind you. So I think it's worth it, and we're excited about being able to potentially help you out with it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Brett Eliasen, joined by Tyler Selcer. Thank you.